Forget the Golf, forget the ID4, this is the most important new Volkswagen. The brand has sold some 8 million Tiguans in its time, and this is the first new one in about 8 years. The question is, does it better compete with cars like the Toyota RAV4, Nissan X-Trail and Honda CR-V? And importantly, could it be the right one for your family? Well, let's find out.
While it might look familiar from the outside, don't tune out, because this third generation version has some major changes underneath, which make it a significantly different and perhaps much more compelling car. It is likely that VW's Australian division will continue to tie the powertrains to each variant to make its local model walk a bit more straightforward than the overwhelming amount of choice available to European buyers. This will likely mean 3 main trim levels, including a base 110 TSI version, a mid-grade version with the new 150 TSI engine, and a top spec R-Line with an upgraded 195 TSI engine. As for that all-important price tag, the answer is we just don't know yet. Will it become even more expensive than the current midsizer? Honestly, that's looking likely, although by how much will be key for Volkswagen, as it's looking to face not only an array of hybrid options from its more traditional rivals, but also new rivals from China. For reference, the current Tiguan starts at $43,990 before on-road costs and tops out at $66,990 for the top spec R-Line. And the local division has indicated starting prices are looking to inch closer to that $50,000 mark, but it will be accompanied by a major increase in standard equipment in order to tempt sales away from mid or high-grade versions of its rivals. Expect standard gear on new 110 TSI versions to expand to include things like leather interior trim, as well as LED headlights, large alloy wheels, and new multimedia screens, which are now 15 inches in size, running brand new software. There's also a new version of VW's renowned digital instrument cluster, and some vehicles will additionally have a new head-up display. Tri-zone climate is set to return, and connected services equipment is also set to expand across the Volkswagen range. Elsewhere, expect new seat designs across the range and an extended array of soft touch materials to make the cabin feel more premium for this third generation offering.
The Tiguan adopts a more curvy visage this time around. It's removed the hard, sort of boxy character lines of the previous car. Not only does this relate it more to its incoming range of EVs like the ID4, but it also makes it look quite a bit different. It almost makes it look smaller and more compact. And actually, I quite like the new vibe after seeing it in the metal.
The bodywork changes are more than aesthetic too. They even help the new car shave its drag coefficient down from 0.33 to 0.28. Every little bit theoretically makes a difference to fuel consumption. The biggest changes though are reserved for the inside, where the new huge screens dominate the space. There are also a new set of seat designs, and the brand is promising a more ergonomic user experience this time around after some negative feedback around reliance on touch-based controls. A bit more on that later.
When it comes to the interior, this new generation model isn't just a step up, it's a big leap. So much has changed in here. The previous car was nice, it was comfortable, it was sensible, but it was starting to feel a bit old with that really upright and quite sparse dash treatment, and that has been completely replaced this time around. You've got this huge screen, which is really the star of the show, and a much more contemporary kind of piano black inlay, which has the ambient lighting working through it as well. And of course, you've got Volkswagen's virtual dash cluster in there, which is nice, customizable, runs really fast, looks really good too. Still probably one of the best in the industry. I'm really glad that this time around they didn't swap the steering wheel out. It's got the same steering wheel as the outgoing Tiguan, but they've, for R-Line versions especially, have removed the touch panels and replaced them with nice solid buttons, which makes it really easy to use when you're driving. You can customize all these screens and change things like volume and cruise control really nice and easily. And then there's this center design. So as I was saying before, the previous Tiguan was quite sparse down here, but this new center console it's raised up, it's trimmed in nice soft surfaces, and you've got this dial here, which is important because unlike the new Skodas, which get a set of customizable dials for things like volume and temperature control, you just get a single one in the Tiguan, and you maintain those touch panels that were on there before. It's never the nicest to adjust the climate through here, but you do control your volume and your drive modes through this little customizable dial just by pressing it like so, which is nice. When it comes to storage, you've got plenty of stuff going on and comfort for the passenger as well. So as you can see, I have plenty of room in here. These seats have been redesigned. They were kind of square and very logical before. They've taken on a bit of a curvier shape, particularly for this R-Line grade, which has nice side bolstering as well. And they're really quite nice and comfy. We've been driving these cars quite a bit over the last couple of days. In the center console here, like the Golf, you have this kind of platform which you can put up, and there are 2 wireless chargers down there, or you can put it down and just put objects on top. It's nice and rubberized, so they're not just going to exit. You've also got a customizable kind of tray here with removable cup holder pieces as well, so you can have either a whole tray or 2 cup holders or 1 cup holder, whatever you want. And then in here there are a further 2 cup holders down there and a nice deep space to store additional objects. Shall we look at the back seat? Here in the back seat, and things are really quite good. That's behind my own driving position there. As you can see, plenty of knee room, plenty of space to put my feet, and headroom, well, you don't want for that either. Unfortunately, this platform does mean that there's a raised centerpiece here for the all-wheel drive hardware, so that center position won't be as easy to use for a full-sized adult, but amenity-wise, you are well treated because you've got 2 USB-C ports, an entire climate zone back here, which is really rare for the mainstream mid-size SUV segment. This R-Line version gets heated seats on the outboard positions as well, and there are adjustable air vents there too. When it comes to storage, you have pockets on the backs of the front seats with a funky little one up here for your phone. The previous car had that as well. Nice trimmings in the doors as well for your elbows. You're not left alone in that department for the back seat. And you get 2 really large bottle holders in each door. This drop-down armrest here also gets a fold-out piece. It's almost like a tray, and you can pop your bottle in there too. Not bad.
Boot space has expanded for this new 3rd generation offering. The previous Tiguan was already good, but this one is massive, offering 652 litres with the 2nd row up. For those wanting 7 seats, a stretched version, which used to be known as the All-Space, is set to be replaced by an all-new car, the Tiguan, which is due in Australia in the final quarter of 2025.
In a way, I don't envy our European friends who can choose from 8 different drivetrains for the new Tiguan, but in Australia, expect the range to continue basically as we know it, and that means a base 1.4 110 TSI engine and then a higher grade 2-litre turbo as well.
Perhaps the most intriguing option in the international lineup is that plug-in hybrid variant, which has been a major focus of the new generation car. It now features a massive battery pack, granting it around 100 kilometers of EV-only driving range, as well as vastly improved charging specs, allowing it to top up from both slow and fast charges much more quickly. While it seems this version won't be available from launch in Australia, the brand's local division has suggested they are interested in potentially adding it to the range in the future. We won't have official fuel consumption figures for the Australian market for a while, but because we'll be getting some familiar engine choices, don't expect them to stray too far from what's out there now. This means mid-7s on the base 110 TSI engine, working its way up to the mid-8s for the top spec R-Line. Unfortunately, we do know the new mild hybrid, which we won't be getting in Australia, shaves almost a litre off of fuel consumption, but in better news, the upgraded 195 TSI engine, which will be in R-Line versions, has nearly identical fuel consumption to the outgoing 162 TSI, so at least that power bump isn't costing you extra. It is a shame we'll be missing out on the plug-in hybrid, which shaves fuel consumption down significantly even when the charge runs low. Expect these turbocharged petrol engines to continue to require mid-shelf 95 unleaded fuel.
The one we're driving here is a 1.5 litre mild hybrid. Now, we won't be getting this engine, at least not at launch in Australia, but it is the closest to what we will see in base cars, and that'll be a 1.4 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder. 110 kilowatts, 250 newton meters, not changed from the previous car either, but this engine can be a bit of a gem. It does feel nice and peppy with that turbo surge, and that works really nicely with the dual clutch transmission. Now, I know dual clutches have been sort of fiddly and problematic in the past, but this one's really nicely tuned. It feels like there's been a bit of software at play to make it nice and smooth. It rolls off quite well at T-junctions and things like that. So I think I have less problems than ever with this drivetrain now in this new Tiguan. The other notable change is it feels really light and springy and reactive, especially with the steering, which feels so responsive in the corners. It almost gives it a feel of just being a giant hatchback, which has always been a trait of Tiguan, but it's more so now than ever. This car is really quite a lot of fun to throw into a couple of corners. So if you're looking for a mid-size SUV that's not boring, this is really it. Elsewhere, the ride is really good too. Not only does it feel light and responsive and firm in this upgraded MQB Evo platform, but also the ride quality has improved as well. It just feels like it eats up bumps no problem. It leans into corners really nicely. There are a whole bunch of very minor improvements that are quite notable. from behind the wheel. So yes, you're getting an improved car overall. It's not different. If you've owned a Tiguan before, this will all be familiar, but this one is improved in so many little ways. The steering is fantastic. It's a huge amount of fun to throw the Tiguan into corners with that new and highly responsive front end and super tight steering. It's easily one of the best in the midsize SUV segment. As for negatives, well, there aren't too many to really call out. I will say that it does feel like on some tires a little bit of noise enters the cabin, and on some wheels as well, the ride is tarnished a little bit by the extra harshness, but on the whole, this is a really lovely SUV to drive. If there's one big annoyance I really do have to call out, it's mainly the fact that you still have to deal with these touch sliders for things like temperature control. And also the touchscreen, it's big, it looks great, the software is much easier to deal with this time around, but it can be quite complex in terms of how many menus and things there are, and that can be a little distracting while you're just trying to concentrate on the road. It would be really nice to see this car adopt the same hardware dials that are in concurrent Skoda products, and it's just sort of a shame that the Tiguan doesn't get those this time around. Keep in mind today we've been driving international spec vehicles, so there's still room for things to change by the time the cars arrive down under, things like wheels and the different engines which we haven't had a chance to sample this time around. So a verdict is really hard to draw a line through for the drive experience, but I've got to say, with this upgraded platform, upgraded suspension, and what feels like a tweaked transmission, this car is much improved this time around. And again, driving is one of the Tiguan's strongest attributes, and it's really leaned into it this time around. So if you want a family car that's also fun to drive, you can do much worse than one of these.
When it comes to safety gear, the Tiguan gets an exhaustive list. Check it out at carsguide.com.au at the full written review. But suffice to say, auto emergency braking, lane keep assist and blind spot monitoring are all standard and more.
It's all well and good to tick all the boxes, but if they aren't calibrated well, they can be kind of nasty and invasive. But here in the Tiguan, I'm pleased to report that for the most part, they're really quite compliant. The only thing that I've had annoy me in the time with the car has been traffic sign recognition, so it'll pick up all sorts of signs and will quite incessantly beep at you if it thinks that you're speeding, like so. But traditionally frustrating things like lane keep assist haven't been too invasive in my time with the car. They do sort of tug on the wheel gently if it thinks that you're going out of your lane, but it's not the kind of violent overcorrections that we're seeing from some other brands. So that's really nice to see.
Expect a modern array of airbags, and while the Tiguan will no doubt be gunning for that coveted and increasingly hard to achieve 5-star ANCAP safety rating, you'll have to check back closer shortly after its local launch to see how it does. It recently secured a maximum 5-star Euro NCAP rating overseas. Volkswagen continues to offer a 5-year and unlimited kilometre warranty in Australia, and you can also expect the new Tiguan to be offered with the same pre-packaged and more attractively priced service plans, although you can expect pricing to continue to be above that of many of its rivals.
To be honest, this one is quite hard to draw a definitive verdict on for Australia just yet because there are so many unknowns, particularly the price tag. But this third generation Tiguan has improved in so many ways, from its exterior design to its overhauled interior, and it's got that matching software to go with it as well. What really sets it apart though is it's even better than ever to drive. Is that enough for you? Tell us what you think in the comments below, and as always, check out our full written review and our Volkswagen news over at carsguide.com.au.